Return to Ithaca. Fragments from a Universe Next Door. Collected by Dren Nemohoti. Written by Robert Anton Wilson. Galactic Archives. To understand what happened to the primates of Terra, a metaphor may be useful. Charlatans, jongleurs, wandering minstrels, stage magicians, on all primitive planets, employ a device known as a trick top hat. This appears to be an ordinary hat and looks empty to the audience, but it actually contains a pouch out of which all sorts of amazing things can be made to appear. Rabbits, yards of bright-colored cloth, glasses of water, and, in general, whatever the magician wishes to produce for the delight and amazement of his audience. This ritual, like all rituals and religious visions or ecstasies, is actually a memory of the future, but there is no way for primitives to understand that. Consider the epistemological plight of the Terran primates at the time of this ancient romance. They knew that they were made of molecules, which were made of atoms, which were made of subatomic particles, which were expressions in spacetime of quantum probability matrices. This knowledge, alas, was so recent that it had never been integrated into their philosophies or into the rules of their social games like religions, politics, economics. Their whole social reality tunnel was based on pre-quantum superstition and ignorance. The sociological nexus was Euclidean, Aristotelian, Newtonian. Even Maxwell and Einstein had only been digested by a few. Over 2,500 years earlier, one mutant primate, Lao Tzu, had written, "The greatest is within the smallest." Less than 1/100% of the Terran primates were capable of understanding this before 1984. They looked for causality everywhere else. Some, known as astrologers, scanned the distant stars. Others, known as Marxists, scanned economics. They knew that the physicists understood causality better than any other group on their planet, but few of them, even among the physicists, realized how quantum theory applied to their own behavior. Quantum psychology did not begin to emerge until the 1990s. What was known in their planet as Bell's theorem, an elementary kindergarten level discovery routinely divined on every planet at about the same time as atomic energy and space travel are beginning, was only 20 years old among them, and barely understood even by the physicists. The few quantum theorists, such as Sarfati, who dared to speculate about macrocosmic quantum effects, large systems engaged in quantum jumping were usually dismissed as romantics by their colleagues, despite the fact that each stage of metamorphosis of every living creature, including the Terran primates themselves, was obviously a quantum leap. The primate mystics, most of them brain damaged, endlessly told the other primates to look within. Most primates assumed, in primitive Aristotelian fashion, that what was within was some gaseous entity which they had called mind or soul. Unable to find such an abstraction, they either gave up in despair or took their negative results as a positive revelation and became adherents of the no mind or no ego philosophy of Buddha and David Hume. Of course, if they had truly looked within, scientifically, they would have found that their thoughts, precepts, and reality tunnels were determined by the structure of the primate nervous system, which was determined by the genetic or molecular design of the primate evolutionary script, which was determined by the laws of quantum biophysics. That is, concretely, their brains were shaped by cells, shaped by molecules, shaped by atoms, shaped by quantum probabilities. Since the quantum connection is non-local, it is inevitable that introspection and meditation could discover no ego within. Within and without are Euclidean parameters that do not apply to the quantum world. But the primates could not understand this. When, due to trauma, masochistic religious practices, alkaloid herbs, or mere statistical chance, their neuroatomic circuitry propelled them into quantum consciousness, they could not conceptualize that they were outside space-time entirely. Space and time, they still thought, even after Einstein, were as solid as walls. They could only imagine, primate fashion, that they were traveling in space and out of their bodies. They called it astral projection and devised numerous primate superstitions about it. Similarly, when one of them would begin to learn how to use the meta-programming circuits in the forebrain, they could not conceptualize that they were peering into the alternative quantum probability matrices. Instead, they devised a whole mythology of heavens, hells, purgatories, astral planes, fairylands, demons, gods, angels, euphonauts, to make Euclidean maps of such quantum experiences. We should be charitable to the Terran primates. All planets have gone through such superstitious stages before the head revolution is complete among them. When the neuroatomic circuitry, only occasionally released during most of their history, began to function fully in 1984, the primates could not begin to understand what was happening, for all of the above reasons. They were suddenly in communication, not just with one reality tunnel, but with all possible reality tunnels. They could see quantum probabilities leading to all possible futures, but they were unable to conceptualize what they saw. The primate brain, always quick to cover ignorance with primate archetype, projected all their traditional superstitions on what was happening. Terra was a weird and crazy place for several years. Giant lobsters with ray guns, Tibetan demons, Ignatz the anarchist mouse, and dozens of other fantasy figures were likely to appear at any time, any place, even in churches during funerals or at top-secret governmental meetings. The joke, were all living in a surrealist novel, gained wide currency, although few realized how close to the truth it was. The intelligence-raising drug Neuro began to change things a bit after it appeared in 1988. People's fantasies gradually became more sophisticated and philosophical, and their reality tunnels accordingly adapted. With the publication of Sirag's general field theory in 1993, the smarter primates immediately realized what was really occurring on their planet and throughout the cosmos. They gradually comprehended that all their myths had been memories of the future, available to them through the non-local activity of the quantum waves making up their brains. Age-old religious visions of immortality, for instance, they recognized as pre-capitulations of the inevitable end product of their current longevity research. The magic carpets and 7-league boots they already had. The new heaven and new earth they were rapidly building. The superhuman heroes and heroines of romantic fiction were the humans they were themselves becoming, as the head revolution accelerated them towards greater intellectual efficiency, more flexible emotional equilibrium, neurosomatic rapture, and meta-programming wisdom. They understood that the Bodhisattva's vow, common among the neurosomatic circuit Eastern primates, was no idle fantasy either, even though it promised to redeem all sentient beings. With time travel made possible through the general field theory, they could change any past probability waves, creating a new universe where each entity would take the best possible path instead of whatever sad paths it had taken to arouse their compassion and intervention. They understood the words, previously totally opaque, of the Jewish mystic Jesus, who had said, "All that I do, ye shall do also, and more." They understood that every political and mystical ideal of freedom, however aborted in its first appearances, was fated to be achieved in some form in the infinite non-local cosmos opening before them. They understood that the oneness with Earth, so many had discovered in the previous 2 decades, had only been the overture to the discovery of non-locality, as they shared more and more in oneness with all that is and all that can be. And they understood, of course, the time-honored allegory of the trick top hat, which was just a symbol of the brain. This ritual was passed on from generation to generation, since it represented the greatest treasure in the universe, which is shared by all and belongs to none, the faculty of creativity, partially unleashed in each sentient being, fully released at the proper galactic genetic time by the head revolution.